hits. What's up, Hobby Maniacs? Rob Bear here today with another fantastic flashback for you. This is the 3rd edition Chaos Space Marine Codex. It was a really fun and exciting time for the hobby, and this codex is kind of what everybody always harkens back to when they, say I want new chaos rules and get all fired up about the way chaos is now with like cultists and dinobots and flying pterodactyls and things like that. So if you hear all that hate out there and you have no idea why it is, why the veteran players are so hot about it, hopefully after the next 2 videos you will understand somewhat why some of us veteran players really want our old chaos back, I guess, so to speak. Not necessarily like we ever will. It's like always wanting that thing, and then you go back to it and you're like, well, maybe it wasn't so good after all, kind of like some of those old 80s TV shows, I feel like. But at the end of the day, everybody always wants something and nobody's ever happy. But I thought it would be fun, because I still had my old codex here, to go back and kind of reminisce about the old days, the air quotes good old days. But before we get to all that, I would like to invite you to stay in the trenches. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check on the Patreon link up on the top left hand corner to see what promotions or what special giveaways we're doing to help keep this YouTube channel ad free. Check out the blog, spikybitsblog.com, and head on over to thelongwar.net. That's the home of the battle reports for exclusive content, early access videos, and more. Become a veteran of the Long War today. So getting back to the whole Chaos Codex kind of thing here, you can tell this is definitely a very worn copy. It probably went to a great many events itself. I know this thing has been to Vegas. It's been all up and down the eastern seaboard for sure. At many Adepticons, and I'm kind of actually surprised it's in such good quality. So back in the day, we didn't have the hardcover stuff that we have today. A lot of it was black and white, like on the inside. The only thing that was color was like the whole kind of hey, check out these miniatures kind of section. So kind of a little bit different, but these things were only $33 retail as opposed to the $50 retail that the hardcover codexes are these days. Now, page count wise, you're talking 90, 80 some pages in here, which is basically a supplement these days, not a full-on codex. So you're kind of starting to see that yes, it does seem like you didn't get as much back then, but when you start looking at some of the army entry, areas here, where are they? They're basically not the whole kind of full page in one per page kind of. Well, I guess they are kind of one per page here, but I remember seeing some of them on multiple pages. Okay, well then I have no idea. I guess there's just more and more units these days, and they just needed to make more room in the books there. So jumping on in, you kind of see the whole introductory page here, and then here's an idea of some of the old scratch built terrain that we saw in the 2nd edition. This is this terrain section here was all leftovers from 2nd edition before they started getting more and more better with building their stuff. This was actually a pattern that you could download from their website back in the day for the what was it? Dang, I totally forget that. There was a campaign, and there was a map, and there was all this. It was like a hive, and you would control certain sectors, and there was downloads you can get, and you could print out the patterns and cut them out of foam core and make your own buildings. But this was all scratch built stuff here in the front, kind of sectionalized, and then this is some of that terrain that you'll see, and I'm actually not sure. I forget whether it was in this book or not. So then it's got the basic intro, like, hey, why play Chaos? The Horse Heresy, yada yada yada, things like that. Some of this artwork here was all brand new about the the Shattered Legions. They were just starting to develop the whole storyline about the Salamanders and the Raven Guard and things like that. That was kind of like not really part of canon, so to speak. They're kind of developing it. So, all of that now, 10 years later, 16, 18 years later, depending on how you want to date this particular material, is all pretty much kind of fleshed out. Like, we know who the Primarchs are, we kind of know what happened, etc., etc. And a lot of that had to do with, the whole Horus Heresy novel series, which started in 2006. And then, of course, there's a few, basically shout outs to Battlefleet Gothic, which was definitely a thing there too. Right there's the Planet Killer. So a lot of good lore and a lot of good things in here about, you know, chaos and things like that. If you ever have a good chance to read it, it's a really good storyline. And then you get to the special rules, and that's where it really starts. You kind of start to understand that this codex was actually, it seemed like it was really well thought out. Now, there was a few loopholes here and there, but it almost seems like it was designed that way with like the power level and things. Like if you built something one way, it was meant to kind of work, and it didn't really matter because, you know, the strongest, most bestest, baddest things on the tabletop back then were, you know, like a Vindicator or like a las cannon, or, you know, demon princes were a thing at the time because of this book, but it really wasn't. Like, there wasn't these broken combos, there wasn't invisibility, and there wasn't these things running amok, and you could have dreadnoughts and things doing, just kind of jumping around, just doing stuff, basically. So the special rules, you could take a veteran skill. It was kind of neat. It kind of worked. There was Chaos Psychic Powers. Now, Psychic Powers weren't their own phase. That didn't start until 6th edition. It went from 2nd edition, jumped on up to 6th edition, so it skipped a couple editions. Psychic powers are generally done in the shooting phase for those 4 editions in there. Demonic instability, which has always been a thing, and before they got their own book, that was pretty much functioned the same way. Demonic summoning was a certain thing. It would come in depending on the turn. Now, you probably noticed this: turn 2, 4+, turn 3, 3+, turn 4, 4+. Hey, what does that sound like these days, right? It kind of sounds familiar. Normal reserves right there. And greater demons in possession. So it was kind of cool. You could take, and you could say there was a greater demon inside a human vessel. And what's funny is, if you had the misfortune of being in combat with that human vessel before the greater demon manifested, he would swing at the strength of the greater demon. So you're like, so if you happen to get in combat and you have a veteran sergeant and he's like smacking somebody down at strength 8, you're like, why is he strength 8? I can't tell you. Oh, okay, he's your demon host. He's going to turn into like a bloodthirster next round. Uh-oh. And so you try to kill that guy as quick as possible, because if you killed him, the demon would come out and he would be, I guess, less strong. He'd be a little bit weak, and you'd have to take these instability checks. And he got weaker as he went, but you didn't just kind of lose him, which was nice. Then there was demon weapons, which were really interesting, and you had to perform mastery over them by doing leadership tests every time you caused the wound. Everybody forgot about it. I know I did, and it wasn't on purpose. It was just one of those rules that you just never thought of, and it was just kind of, whoops, my bad, I totally forgot. This is where it kind of got weird, and you see the restrictions that is in place today on a lot of things in, Warhammer, where they always have these asterisks like only this thing can take this, and only this thing can take this, and only this thing can take this, because this kind of got broken with the way you could equip your Chaos Lords. Like, they said that you could only take a certain amount of points depending on the level of the Chaos Lord, and so many levels of gifts. So right here, this was the gifts of the gods, and there was actual weapons, which was nice, but I remember them being, here they are, demonic gifts themselves. All models with access to armory may select abilities from this list, and there were certain points values depending on how many wounds your character had. And then the big kicker was a Chaos Lord only could spend 150 points from the armory, or up to 100 points of which could be demonic gifts. Other characters could spend 75, of which 50 could be demonic gifts. But those restrictions really didn't make it that hard to kind of abuse things, because I used to have a biker lord that ran around that swung at a strength 8 axe at initiative order of the Chaos Lord, so which I think was 5 or 6 at the time. So, you start thinking about things like that. That's pretty nuts. So you're like, uh-oh, I don't like that. That's bad touching. Chaos got bad touching. So there was a few things that was a little bit abusive, but in the scheme of things, there was no gargantuan creatures. There was no invisibility. If you had one guy, he could still get gunned down out on his own, so you kind of had to protect him. And then you could do things like demonic flight was basically like, you move 12, assault 6. It's like a jump pack. Resilience was nice. It gave you an extra toughness. Strength gave you an extra strength, obviously. Visage gave you -1 to their leadership after you beat them, so that was always cool to have. Raptors actually came with it. Demonic Talons, I actually forget what that did. I want to say it was either gave them rending or plus, I want to say it was +1 attack. It might have been +1 attack. Then there was armor. Armor was basically, you got 3+ armor. Aura, I think, was your invulnerable, but we'll get to that whole section. This is just me recollecting something after, 11, 12 years have passed. So obviously, I'm not going to remember it all quite verbatim, but I do remember the things that stood out in my mind. And then you have the Gifts of the Gods section, which were, straight up the big stuff there. Oh, it's my chili's done. Good deal. I love chili. And then you get down to the demon weapons themselves, which we're going to go over, because there's Dark Blade, Dark Axe, Aether Lance, and Kaigon, which are really interesting in and of themselves, and you don't really see anything like that these days. And the Chaos Vehicle upgrades have pretty much stayed the same. So, like we normally do, we're gonna talk about those first, because when we start going through the book, this is basically like a normal book review, I kind of feel like. So we're going to go over the gifts and the war gear first, and then we'll get to the actual rest of the book probably in the second part of this 40k flashback. Because I feel like the Chaos Codex is that epic that it should probably have two parts. So here's your demon gifts. Demon armor was a 2+ save, so it's basically, like Artificer armor these days. Aura was your 5 up invulnerable. I think that has stayed the same. Chains was kind of weird because it could help you with summoning your greater demon through your vessel, which you really can't do anymore. So it's kind of like one of those mechanics that people aren't going to really relate to now. Essence was +1 wound. Fire was just like a flamer, basically, that was assault. Not quite exactly the same, but you get the idea. Flight, like a jump pack. Mutation was +1 attack. Resilience was +1 toughness. Demonic rune was a way you could count as having an icon, I believe. Oh no, this is the one where you couldn't be insta-killed. Oh yeah, that was awesome. I took that on everything. Demonic Stature was, let's see, Steed. Oh, this was the one where you could basically make somebody into a demon prince, and they had like height, and they had to be like a certain size high, and it had to be on a certain size diameter base. So yeah, when was the last time you ever heard of somebody at GW actually telling you what to put your models on, right? Steed made it a beast. That's what that was. Spawn, not exactly exciting. It's just you get a demon spawn, but you could turn stuff into spawns, which was super funny at times. I definitely agreed there. Speed was, what was this? A model does not have to make a full speed. Oh, it counts as cavalry. Back then, beasts and cavalry were two separate things, so kind of weird to wrap your head around that one. Talons was rending. Oh yeah, okay, so it was rending before they called it rending. That's what it was. Demonic strength was +1 strength. Venom was basically poison before they had a poison special rule. And the demonic visage was -1 to the leadership if you beat him in combat, or morale, or -2 if it was a greater demon. And all the greater demons came with it. Also, the raptors came with it. That was their crazy looking mask right there. Then there was psychic abilities to give to chaos. None of them were actually really good, except for, I think it was the gift of chaos, where you basically turn people into spawn. So that was actually a thing for quite a while. If they failed their toughness check, I believe it was, you would turn them into a chaos spawn. You're like, wait, what? There's no deny to witch, there's no nothing. It's just you roll a toughness test and you turn into a spawn. Like, oh my god, my huge Carnifex, or my chaos whatever, or my huge orc war boss just got turned into a little spawn. Oh, it was so hilarious to do to people. People got so butthurt over that. And I mean, it's a mechanic. It's not like overpowered. You had to pay the price for it. But it was what it was. Then there was veteran abilities, which are kind of like the precursor to chapter tactics, or a lot of other things we see today. Counterattack, furious charge, +1 initiative, +1 strength. Obviously that isn't quite the same anymore. Infiltrate, move through cover, night vision, siege specialists, +1 to armor pen, skilled riders, tank hunters, all stuff we've seen in the past, and this is where it started right here. So chaos, you can kind of tell, you can kind of get the flavor, like there's a lot of flavor in here, it's really spicy. And then the book that preceded this one was immediately terrible in a lot of chaos players' eyes. So you can kind of feel the palpable hate. Like you go from something that's so nicely written and so ornate and so like full of fluff and just imagination and background and character, to what we got later, and it's just like, so angry. You know what I mean? So like you kind of starting to feel why there's so much hate. The demon weapon section, the Dark Blade was +2 strength, I believe. Yep, +2 strength, and to both wounding and armor pen rolls. And there was, like I said, there was a way to make that you could get that up to strength 8, because if you took a demonic ability and you got Furious Charge when you're swinging in initiative, Strength 8, initiative 4 or 5, or 5 or 6 actually, because it was on the Lord. It got kind of crazy. Aether Lance, Kai Gun, some people took it, some people didn't. And then you get into the vehicle upgrades, which are all pretty much the same as they are today. So then it jumps into the actual army list. Remember, Force Org was always with us. Like, they always was like, hey, you take this, this, and this, and that was always a thing. And then it jumps into the whole, these are the characters you can take and things like that. And kind of gets pretty deep in there. I want to save that for the next video, because there's something in here where basically you could take chapter traits. Like, you say you wanted to feel an Iron Warriors army, or say you wanted to feel a Word Bearers army. There was a specific way to do that in here. So I want to talk about that, and I want to show off some of the showcases in the back, and I feel like that would be a good time for another video. So we're going to cut it right here. So make sure you come back next week for part 2 of our 40K flashback on the 3rd edition Chaos Space Marine Codex.
Deleted scenes, bonus content, and all the interviews and post-game wrap-up videos can be located in the Hall of Veterans on thelongwar.net. Visit thelongwar.net today and try a week completely free with no strings attached. That's not all. Thelongwar.net is also your hobby resource for exclusive early access with an ad-free experience to all your favorite videos. Members of the Hall of Veterans gain early exclusive access to multiple hobby videos.